Please take a second to subscribe, then like and share afterwards. We can really use your support. Thank you. Previously on Hallowed Ground, we explored the very beginnings of the nation with the inauguration of George Washington and their consecration of the nation to God. Now we are going to finalize Hallowed Ground with a climactic conclusion that ties up our connection to September 11th. In ancient times, the great cities of the ancient world were walled, and within those walls were gates to allow their inhabitants and visitors to exit and enter. The gate was the city's portal to the rest of the world, the center of trade through which commerce and merchandise poured, the place of markets, of buying and selling and trading. The gate thus became the symbol of the city's power, and so the gates were often adorned and embellished with the symbols and signs of power, wealth, and greatness. The gates of Nineveh, the gates of Babylon. The gate would become the embodiment of the city itself, the kingdom, empire, or civilization by which it stood. However, the gate was the most vulnerable place along the wall, and all attacks would focus on the most vulnerable point. For ancient Israel, if the enemy appeared at the gate, it meant that judgment was at hand. Moses himself warned the nation of what would happen if it turned away from God. They shall besiege you at all your gates. Deuteronomy 28:52. In the days of judgment, the enemy would cause distress at the nation's gate. Through the prophet Ezekiel, the Lord said this, "I have set the point of the sword against all their gates." Ezekiel 21:15. And so, the gate would become the focal point of the sword of violence. And after the judgment had fallen on the city of Jerusalem, it would be written, "All her gates are desolate. Her gates have sunk into the ground." Lamentations 1:4-9. Judgment begins at the gate. Now, when we look at America, you may be thinking it doesn't have walled cities, but it certainly has a gate. By looking at New York City, you are looking at a gate. You see, New York City is the gateway of America. Historically, Ellis Island, near the tip of Manhattan, was the very gate of the nation as ships came and gone, with the Statue of Liberty as a reminder to arriving people that it was the land of freedom and liberty. It was known as the Gate of America, and even today, nearby JFK Airport is a major hub for international travel, maintaining the city as the gateway to the nation. Now, the mystery of judgment. Judgment begins at the gate. 9/11. It all began here, like the Assyrians who arrived at the city's gate that brought judgment to the nation. So too, the terrorists brought their attack to the gate of the nation. Your enemy shall distress you at all your gates. And it was very specific with the gate. That first airplane came in at that very point, past the Statue of Liberty and into the World Trade Center. Photos of the statue on that day overlooked the cloud of destruction. Her gates shall lament and mourn. Isaiah 3:26. In the days of the nation's judgment, its high places are broken down by its enemies. They shall break down her towers. It will be a day of alarm against the high towers. And in ancient Israel, they built towers on either side of the gate, twin towers, watching over the gate of the city. Now, back along the walls of the city, it was the walls of defense. The nation's military power were stationed along the walls. Like the gate, once the walls were breached, it would be just a matter of time before the city fell. Breaching the wall meant it was another sign of judgment. The wall is the city, and ultimately the nation's defense. The Wall of America is its structures and systems of defense, its military, its weaponry, its intelligence. The Defense Department is the Wall of America. And where is it headquartered? At the Pentagon. It is a fortress that houses every major department of defense. And what happened on 9/11? The enemy also attacked the Pentagon, America's wall of protection. It was breached, with an airplane blowing a large hole into its wall. Recall, Moses gave a warning to Israel concerning the gate, but then he continued in the same verse, "Until your high and fortified walls in which you trust come down." And as the two ancient judgments on the gate and the wall are linked together, so too are these two attacks on 9/11. Shifting gears, we will discover even more to this mystery. America rests on two earthly foundations, its economic power and its military power. Of the two, its economic power was first to rise, and it all started in New York City. And when did it begin? Well, we can pinpoint exactly when. In 1609, explorer Henry Hudson was sailing on the Half Moon, a ship belonging to the Dutch East India Company, and landed at the very tip of what would be called Manhattan. It would be the day of the future city's discovery and forever be known as the day of the city's founding. The date? September 11th, 1609. It would mark the rise of America's economic power. It was the start of the beginning. And nearly 400 years later, the same day would mark the beginning of the end. Now for its military power. Again, we can pinpoint exactly when it began as a superpower. But rather than a slow and gradual economic rise, the military power would be dramatic and sudden. It was World War II that transformed America into the world's greatest military power. With neutrality acts in place since the 1930s, involvement in any conflicts would be limited. But with the outbreak of World War II, President Franklin Roosevelt sought to enter the war against the forces of Nazi Germany. It all happened in 1941 when a U.S. Navy ship, the USS Greer, was fired on by a German submarine. 1 week after the incident, the president went on the radio to address the nation.
They will, with divine help and guidance, stand their ground against this latest assault upon their democracy, their sovereignty, and their freedom.
With those words, Roosevelt initiated what would be known as the shoot-on-sight policy. It was the very turning point that would change the course of the war and then of world history. It was a declaration of war. 2 days later, Germany sent word to their Axis ally, the Japanese government, to press them to attack America. Hitler believed A conflict between America and Japan would be a distraction and hinder them from entering the war in Europe. 3 months later, Japan did the unimaginable. They attacked Pearl Harbor. But the war was already declared. Now it was time to enter the war. So, what was the date of that declaration by Roosevelt? September 11th, 1941. Exactly 60 years to the day. Now we can see that Pearl Harbor is linked to 9/11. And that Department of Defense with the Pentagon, its foundation began in 1941, the very same year America entered the war. And on the day of breaking ground for this new fortress, they placed a first stone into the foundation with an engraving marking the letters IXXI. It is the Roman numerals to mark the very day. Those letters signify 9 and 11. That's right, September 11th. The day that began its building would mark the very day its walls would be breached and broken down. Now, back to the foundation of New York City. That ship, the Half Moon, sailed into the bay in 1609. But on the morning of September 11th, 2001, just before the first plane hit the North Tower, the sight of an ancient ship came sailing into the harbor. The ship that appeared in the waters that morning was the Half Moon. As the first plane hit the North Tower, while people began fleeing the World Trade Center area, the Half Moon appeared on the Hudson River, making the same journey towards the tip of Manhattan. But how could this be? It was 400 years ago. Well, it had to manifest as a sign from God on the day of destruction, as in the same way it always does. No one planned it to happen this way, yet it all converged that day. You see, many years earlier, the Half Moon was rebuilt to match the very appearance and scale of the original ship, and they happened to sail it down the precise route as the attacks occurred. But what is the meaning? What is God trying to say here? In the days of judgment, the foundation is exposed. It becomes visible. The Half Moon was part of the foundation of the city. So on 9/11, it again became visible. The building up of the city's foundation is juxtaposed against the breaking down, the planting against the uprooting. So everything returned, not only to the day, but to the place, the southern tip of Manhattan. And the very first thing the Dutch built to begin the city was a trade center. That's right. On 9/11, everything turned to the same place and same day. And no one planned it to be that way. That what was planted will be uprooted, and what was built up will be broken down. Now, if you can recall, back in the Return of Israel episodes, we spoke about the parasha. It was the appointed scripture to be read on a specific Sabbath day. On the Sabbath, 3 days before 9/11, was a word of warning directed to a nation that once knew God but had turned away. It begins, "Blessed shall you be in the city, and blessed shall you be in the field." Deuteronomy 28:3. America would be known as a bountiful nation, as a breadbasket in the world. Blessed shall be your basket and your kneading bowl. The nation speaks of prosperity, agricultural abundance, and the blessings of the nation's economy. Then it goes on, "The Lord will cause your enemies who rise against you to be defeated before your face. They shall come out against you one way and flee before you 7 ways. This would be a blessing of military power. America would defeat its enemies in war, be kept safe from attack in peace, and become the strongest nation on earth. Then we hear, and they shall besiege you at all your gates. This is the appointed scripture days before 9/11. And it went on, cursed shall you be in the city, and cursed shall you be in the field. Remember, the city represents the center of commerce, the power of its economy. The field represents its breadbasket, its agriculture, also its economy. Remember, on 9/11, not only did we see an attack on the Twin Towers and attack on the Pentagon, it also saw a plane destroying a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. The chronology follows the correct order as it is provided in the scriptures. It is the mystery of inversion, the mystery of reversal as we've seen in the return of Israel. The order of the blessings are reversed to bring destruction. It all goes back to the words of Moses. Now, our final part of the 9/11 saga, we look at the mystery of the eagle. He shall come like an eagle against the house of the Lord. Hosea 1:3. The immediate context concerns Hosea's prophecy of Assyria's coming attack. The prophet Ezekiel had also foretold a coming calamity. A great eagle with large wings and long pinions, full of feathers and various colors. Ezekiel 17:3. And also the prophet Jeremiah. Behold, he shall come up and fly like the eagle, and spread his wings over Bozrah. Each of these speak of the enemy or attacker who brings destruction. The invasion would come like a strike of an eagle. It strikes its prey with suddenness, with ferocity, and with power. On 9/11, the enemy came upon the land as an eagle, the sign of judgment. The enemy came from the skies. They flew like the eagle over the land. All 19 terrorists were flying in with suddenness, with ferocity, and with power to bring utter destruction. And even the words of Moses included in the parasha appointed for the Sabbath of 9/11. A people against you from far away, from the end of the earth, as the eagle flies. Here on Prophecies Uncovered.